Hola.
Hello, this call is being translated.
Abuela, listen to what my phone can do.
Abuela, escucha lo que mi teléfono puede hacer.
¡Wow! Ahora dime sobre tu novia nueva.
Wow, now tell me about this new girlfriend.
Huh?
Tú sabes lo que dije.
You know what I said.
Language is no longer a barrier thanks to Live Translate with Galaxy AI on Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Learn more at Samsung.com. Samsung account login required. Calls must be made using the native Samsung dialer.
Today on City Cast Madison. It's the Friday News Roundup. This week, I'm joined by City Cast Madison's Hayley Sperling. Tuesday's storm knocked out power for tens of thousands of residents, blocked city streets, and damaged city trees. The City Council saved 3 buildings from demolition on State Street. And a new passenger rail train route from St. Paul to Chicago is officially in service. It's Friday, May 24th. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. All right, welcome to the Friday News Roundup. Our streets are alive with sounds of birds and blowers and buzzsaws because that was a storm. The storm is giving spring cleaning. It's cleanup time. Joining me to talk storm and more is our wonderful newsletter maven and our leader, Hayley Sperling. Hey, Hayley.
Hi, Bianca. We have made it through the storm.
Made it through the storm, and like any good storm, you get to look at all the wreckage on the other side and say, okay, let's clean up. Let's get on to business and move forward. But talking about business, man, we've got an ask for y'all listening around feedback.
Yeah, our annual CityCast audience survey is live. Very exciting. And we would love to know how you think we're doing. It's a quick web survey, just about 6-7 minutes. And anyone who takes it is eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card plus some CityCast Madison swag. So what's not to love about that? You can find
Do we get to try? Do we get to win?
Oh my God, right?
I want it.
Do we count as the audience?
Yeah, we listen.
We do. And we hope you do too. So if you like us, if you hate us, tell us. We really want to know. You can find that survey at citycast.fm/survey. And we'll have a link to that in our show notes as well. And just a quick note, if you did fill out the survey last year, thank you very much. We appreciate you. But we still want to hear from you again. So new year, new data, please and thank you. We appreciate you. Yeah. And now we'll dive into all this news.
Yes. If you're blown away by us, I'm just thinking about things being blown away. This storm was incredible. It was much bigger than I realized. And maybe many of us are like, oh, it's a big storm. Oh, it's bad. Oh, it was bad. Tuesday night, it spun off of a tornado, what hit us. Unfortunately, the tornado that the storm spun off of did kill several people in the town of Greenfield, Iowa. That's like about 55 miles from Des Moines. So, thankfully, people are safe, but there's a lot of damage, right? I mean, we all saw it. I went around trying to assess it. There was a lot of property damage across the city. The city's Instagram said that roughly like 150 streets in Madison were mostly or completely blocked due to the storm. And 7 trees fell onto homes. I saw one of those homes. It was a tree just completely blocking the sidewalk as well, and it just come down and smashed onto a house. It's quite unfortunate. And it caused historic power outages. The storm had the most widespread power outages here since the Great Ice Storm of 1976. So almost 50 years ago.
Ooh, that's a fun fact.
That's a fun fact. I mean, and, getting power back up to people, that's a big task for thousands of people. So the Madison School District canceled school on Wednesday because of the storm. There's so much to be done. Also, I saw Middleton open temporary storm shelters after the storm for residents impacted by the storm, which I thought was really thoughtful. But yeah, Hayley, where were you? What what was your experience?
I was stressed during the storm. I personally, I love a good thunderstorm. I love a little lightning, but when the sirens start going off, that's when I get nervous. And the sirens went off several times. And, I kept getting those alerts. I'm sure you got them too, like those really loud alerts that goes to everyone's phone at the same time. And it was very stressful. And I was kind of just hunkered down in my living room trying to get my cats away from the windows, despite the fact that they wanted to be by the windows. They were like, I need to know what's going on out there. They were ready to go. They were ready to sail away into the storm. And I was like, babes, how about we don't do that? Yeah, it was an adventure. But thankfully, I stayed safe for the most part and no damage to my house or my car. Thankfully, that was something that I'm always very stressed about because there's so many trees. That's why we love Madison, because it's so full of nature.
Yes.
But you don't want your house or your car to be full of that nature when the storm rolls around. And as someone with an outdoor parking spot, that's always my biggest fear. I'm just
Same.
I truly relinquish myself to be okay, whatever happens tonight, I'm not even going to look at my car. I'm going to have to deal with this tomorrow. And hopefully there will be nothing to deal with. And thankfully there wasn't. But again, we keep our fingers crossed that day never comes.
Yeah, I actually intentionally, the area that I'm in, other storms have come and I'm almost every single time there's a storm, there's a limb down. There's a tree limb down. And I thought it's not safe to be where I'm at. So I went downtown and I parked in an underground city lot. So thankfully, yeah, I was just just in case I'm going to do this, which I appreciated because then, yeah, sure enough, right on the block where I park outside, there was a tree completely on top of a car. Just exactly where. So yeah. And also when I left, I kind of waited out the storm downtown and was driving around the Capitol Square and realized how bad the storm. It was a huge tree was down in front of Gray's. And, it looked like, I don't know, it felt like driving down East Johnson, there was potential for flooding. It was when I got to my second destination, I was asked, how'd you get here by boat? I'm like, yeah, my Subaru. But, yeah, it was quite the adventure. And the city is an adventure for the city. They shout out to all of our city workers, our firefighters and more. The city's been sending urban forestry crews to clean up the downed trees that are creating blockages. They said it's their current priority, but they'll also be removing public trees that have fallen on houses, so helping out with that sort of thing. But it can be a pretty tough task because some of the trees fell into electrical lines, which makes the process a lot more dangerous.
Yeah, that's very scary. I mean, I was reading all of the incident reports from the fire department and from the city and whatnot, and the fire department was just booked all night long responding to emergencies. A lot of downed power lines, a lot of downed trees. But if people see a tree down or see something that might be an issue, they can report it to the city, right?
Yes, they can. The city says to use the Tree Concern Report a Problem form, and that's at the cityofmadison.com/report a problem. We'll also drop that in our show notes. But yeah, you can let them know. The city also aims to give every Madison resident a brush collection opportunity before Friday, June 14th. So, because y'all, that brush is around and we all know it. So
I'm bringing an entire tree with me to the drop-off site. No.
Well, luckily people are on the job. Thank you to all the city workers, and I'm glad that we're safe. We made it out. There are other things to discuss, even though the storm was kind of the biggest elephant in the room. Let's take a quick break and get into some more news.
Hola.
Hello, this call is being translated.
Abuela, listen to what my phone can do.
Abuela, escucha lo que mi teléfono puede hacer.
Wow. Ahora dime sobre tu novia nueva.
Wow, now tell me about this new girlfriend.
Huh?
Tú sabes lo que dije.
You know what I said.
Language is no longer a barrier thanks to Live Translate with Galaxy AI on Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Learn more at Samsung.com. Samsung account login required. Calls must be made using the native Samsung dialer.
Salute big savings this Memorial Day with Blinds.com. Upgrading window coverings can be a minor project with a major impact, and Blinds.com makes it easy. Choose premium blinds, shutters, and outdoor shades, just in time for summer fun. Get unlimited window treatments installed for one low cost, all backed by Blinds.com's 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day sale now for up to 50% off, plus premium doorbusters. Save up to 50% at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
All right. Talking about our city streets, let's talk about State Street.
Let's talk about State Street. The question today is, what do we do with the 400 block of State Street, particularly the little stretch of buildings that's right by Lisa Link Peace Park? This is the question that City Council contended with earlier this week. And at the crux of this issue is whether or not to tear down several buildings on that block. So on the one hand, you have your developer who says that these buildings are in a state of disrepair and they need to be demolished. And in favor of these buildings, they said, we're going to build this 6-story, 25-unit apartment building with commercial space at the bottom. The tale as old as time in Madison development history. So if you'll recall, these buildings used to be home to businesses like Sencha Tea Bar, B-Side Records, Freedom Skate Shop, all of which were told that they need to get out, like these buildings are going to be torn down. And they did, all these buildings, all these businesses, thankfully, had relocated to other spots on State Street. So shout out to all of them for being able to kind of weather this storm for the better. But they moved out and now nothing's happened. So basically a while ago, the Plan Commission was like, no, you can't tear down these buildings. You have not done, the Plan Commission talking to the developers was saying, you have not done your due diligence in taking care of these buildings. The buildings themselves do have some historical significance, right? They are old. Madison loves its old buildings. We know that. But they are not designated as landmarks. And again, just because they have this historical recognition doesn't necessarily prevent them from getting demolished ever. So it is on the table. They're not we have to save these buildings because they're so historical. It's really just is this going to end up being a demolition by neglect by the landlord? That's what the city is kind of trying to suss out. So Alder Juliana Bennett, who represents this site, she's in favor of the demolition. She said that, despite the fact that these buildings have some historical value, they don't really add to the character of the street. And she said that she fears that they will fall into further disrepair, if we just keep leaving them as they are. Because again, there's no commercial tenants in them right now. But on the other hand, you have the city who isn't sold on the stories that the developers are pitching. So Juliana Bennett, she tried to overturn essentially the Plan Commission's denial of the demolition request. And to do that, they would have had to get a majority vote on the issue. But this is kind of where things got sticky. So, again, the developers are saying these buildings are in disrepair, we can't do anything about it, what's going on? But on the other hand, longtime downtown alder Mike Revere brought up a very good point according to the State Journal. He said, basically, if these buildings are so structurally unsound, why is the applicant, being the developers, continuing to rent out the apartments? Why would our building inspection allow people to be living there if they're structurally unsound? It just doesn't make any sense. A very fair question, right? These developers are saying these buildings are awful. We can't do anything about them. And yet they are still making money off of the tenants who are living in the apartments above where the businesses were. So
right.
Make it make sense, right?
Yeah.
It's a very fair and valid question. So again, Bennett tried to overturn the Plan Commission's decision, but ultimately the move failed. But the council voted 9-10 on the appeal, which really underscores kind of how contentious of an issue this is, right? We're really split. It's a really hard question. And now what's next? Once again, it's just kind of a giant question mark, right? The developers are mulling their legal options, as they do. And meanwhile, that part of State Street continues to make me kind of sad when we walk past it because it's just like the ghost of businesses that were, and just kind of like this weird, eerie, like this could be something new, but it's not yet. It's giving me similar vibes to like the 100 block of State Street, where they had those similar issues where it's like they were going to tear down all of those buildings and build a hotel, and then the funding fell through, and now they're all just sitting vacant. And it's like, what do we do with these buildings?
Right.
Do we preserve them? Is there value here?
Yeah.
So that's the question, right? Like, what do we save? What has value? But also, is the city putting too much pressure on developers here? It's a very tight rope to walk, especially again as we contend with the fact that Madison is in a housing crisis. We need more housing availability. We need to build, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we need to build at all costs, right?
Right.
So
yeah, it's sussing that out, and I totally relate to what you're saying about it feels like a ghost. It feels eerie. There is a vibe, and speaking about like walking, State Street to me is a place that I would bring people to Madison when I was a college student. Like, we're going to walk on State Street because it was all of these cool buildings and businesses and local businesses. And, you know, the changes on State Street, I think that it makes sense for there to be a little bit more thought into this space, because I might be crazy, but in terms of tourism, like it's our main drag, kind of, you know, and it is weird to see what it's been going through, and you know, just how it looks like all of these kind of high end, like I appreciate that we have a housing problem, but you know, does State Street have to fix our housing problem? Maybe that's me being selfish. I'm looking at a photo of them right now. Two of them were built in the late 1800s, and one of them has a little like 1893 or whatever it was when it was built. But they don't look great because they're falling into disrepair. So it's like, are they adding to what this great stroll could be on State Street? I don't know. Yeah, it's curious. It's curious.
Yeah, this just... It's like, to me, it's like, is the council just trying to take a stand here and just say like, hey, developers, do your part? Or is this just kind of like a losing battle, right? Because like, what are we really fighting for in these buildings? I don't know, because they aren't really adding much. This kind of reminds me of like many, many years ago when our former mayor, Paul Soglin, was like, no more liquor license on State Street. And he fought against what used to be Madtown Frites, trying to get like a license just to sell like beer and wine. And he was like, no beer for this French fries like store. And it was just like, it was just like, I understand the point you are trying to make, but like, this is not the battle to have it, right? Ultimately, Frites went out of business, you know, like we don't talk about that anymore. Frites is gone.
And that's something we've heard from restaurateurs, like how important it is to be able to, like, what people want, like what makes sales. Something like that can make or break. So that's interesting.
Right. Exactly. So it's like, I understand that like this is a really important issue for the city, and like it does set an interesting precedent on both sides, right? It sets an interesting precedent for like, what do we save on State Street, but also like, what are the standards that we hold our developers to, and what are the standards that the city is keeping? One of the things that the developers pointed out, they were like, you know, you're talking about historical significance of these buildings, but meanwhile, we just tore down a bunch of historical buildings on like the 100 block and like over on, you know, the Capitol Square in order to make way for the new and improved like historical society and history museum. So it like they're saying that the city is being hypocritical there. So, you know, it's a really tough square to circle, as one would say, but it's a good thing that we're having these conversations, and it's a good thing that we have these questions, right? And people can dive further into this story, right?
Yeah, they can. I mean, we had a fantastic conversation with Madison historian Stu Levitan. He's longtime former chair of the Madison Landmarks Commission, and we discussed this block in that conversation. And it was like examining what we might save, so what's worth saving in Madison. So yes, highly recommend that. Yeah, we'll drop that into our show notes if you want to check out that conversation. But we got to keep this train moving. And speaking about trains, we have some train news in Wisconsin. A new passenger rail train route launched Tuesday from St. Paul to Chicago. We just love train news, so we had to bring the story. That route has 8 stops. There's not one in Madison, but there are stops near us. La Crosse, that's maybe subjective, but I'll take it. So stops in La Crosse, Tomah, Wisconsin Dells, Portage, Columbus, Milwaukee Airport, and Sturtevant. And I'm so friggin' thrilled about that. The train, the trains are on the track, and this is something that you can hop on. It's the first new passenger train in Wisconsin in 20 years. Wow. Long overdue. I mean, it's, talking about infrastructure and transportation. This is big. Just to know, like, coach ticket prices start at like $41 for adults each way between St. Paul and Chicago. It runs daily with a travel time of about 7.5 hours. So we just thought we'd bring that up because it's a glimmer of hope and light, because we know that our city is currently figuring out our own future with Amtrak stations. And we did an episode on that, on the proposed locations back in January, that I feel like I learned so much about what they're kind of cooking up. And I know that they'll be engaging the public more as that process moves forward. So we'll throw that link in our show notes.
Bring the trains to Madison. That's what we got to do.
And hey, guess what, you guys? There's another piece of news. Our train here on this team has a new conductor, Miss Hayley Sperling. Hey! We have a new executive producer of City Cast Madison.
Yay, that's my news. I've got big news. I got a promotion, which is very exciting because I love Madison, I love CityCast, and I love bringing y'all these stories. And I'm super excited to take on this role. That means you'll probably be hearing me on the pod more often. We'll be getting to do more fun and exciting things. It also means that I am going to be looking for a new newsletter editor to be writing Madison Minutes, which is a very bittersweet thing for me, right? Madison Minutes was the baby that me and my former business partner, Sam, grew as our own. And I'm excited to hand it off. We'll have more information on that in the coming weeks for sure. But if you're interested, if you think that you could write that newsletter, let me know. I would love to hear from you. You can send us an email at madison@citycast.fm.
Yes. And you'll still have a touch on the newsletter. You just won't be the writer.
Of course. I'll still be editing it, and I'm sure I'll still have to write it on occasion. That's how this job goes. It's you got to be a jack of all trades to make it all happen. So I'm super excited. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes. I'm so thrilled. You're so talented, and I'm excited for this new leadership role for you. And that means that our launch executive producer is off to go do something new. Molly Stentz is changing roles at CityCast. She's becoming our company's first ever launch producer. So CityCast is growing. We're debuting 2 new cities soon, Austin and Nashville, which is pretty dope. Now, because I've got family in Nashville, so I'm excited to hear some of those. And she's going to help both of those teams get off the ground. So, hey, trains are moving, and it's an exciting time.
We love it. We're so excited. It all comes together. It all comes full circle, and our train has left the station.
Haley, congratulations. And as always, thank you so much for rounding up the news with me this week.
Of course. Thank you, Bianca.
That's all for today here on City Cast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, your host. We're produced by Phil Circus, Elizabeth Kama, Noah Snyderman, Natalie Rivera, and Molly Stentz. Hayley Sperling is our new executive producer. Our theme music is by Carl Christensen. Don't forget, you can always get more news delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to Madison Minutes. And if you enjoyed today's show, why not share this podcast with someone who likes to preserve old things. Should note, we are off on Monday for Memorial Day. Hope you have the best weekend. See you back here Tuesday morning with more stories from around the city. Ciao.